Hello and congratulations if you were able to make it up to this level. Today we are going to be looking at the languages of the web. Basically, this curriculum is designed so that we are able to actually learn front-end development. Now, when it comes to front-end development, the languages which are involved are we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, in addition to that, we are going to go a little bit further to learn Tailwind CSS, React JS, and Git and GitHub for you to become a full-fledged front-end web developer. To begin with the lesson of today, we are going to start with HTML. Now, if you are hearing about HTML for your first time, now what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext Markup Language, which means it is a markup language and not a programming language. By a markup language, it means it uses tags. It means it's using tags, that is the opening and closing tags, as we are going to be seeing it as we proceed with this lesson. Okay, now whenever you want to start on an HTML project, the very first thing you're supposed to do is you start by creating, let's create a folder on our desktop. All right, let's create a folder on our desktop. After creating a folder on our desktop, let's call the folder HTML. HTML, HTML. After naming the folder at HTML, the next thing we are going to do is that we are going to open our code editor, which we had already installed in our previous lesson. Now we are going to click on Visual Studio Code. Once you open it, you should have an interface like this. If it is different from mine, there is no issue. It can be just be due to the differences in the themes we are using. For example, here I'm using the modern theme, the modern dark theme. Yeah, we equally have modern dark, we have Monokai Pro. Whatever theme you are using, that's fine. So we are going to come here, we come to file. All right. Once you open your Visual Studio Code, you come to File. Once you come to File, you will navigate down to where we have Open Folder, and you click on Open Folder. It will now take you to this different path. We now click on Desktop since we created our folder on Desktop. Now, when you click on Desktop, you are going to have all the folders that are found on your desktop here. Since we created, I'm going to double click on HTML to open the HTML folder, and then I will now click on select folder. When I now select the folder, it opens it in Visual Studio Code, and it will now look like this. We now have the welcome page here. Now I close this, and if you look here on our left pane, we have new file, we have new folder, we have a refresh explorer, and we have collab folders in explorer. But our point of interest, we are concerned with just new file and new folder. Now whenever we want to create a new file, we are going to click on new file, and then we write the file name. And since we are dealing with HTML, the file extension for HTML is .html, just like when you are dealing with Microsoft Word. All right, for some of you that have been opportune to learn Microsoft Word, you get to notice that the file extension is the .doc, or that is .doxo, .doco, .docx, right? So in our case, since we are dealing with HTML, where our file extension is going to be .html. Now, to create a file, generally, it's a normal norm, or let's say it's like a normal rule for most front-end developers. Whenever we are creating the home page or the landing page, we always like to make use of the index. All right. You can call it whatever thing you wish, but I like to call it the index.html. Some people call it home.html, but I prefer using index.html. After writing index.html, I hit enter. It now takes me to here. Now, what we are going to be looking at, we are going to be looking at the structure of an HTML document. Okay, now for the structure of an HTML document, all right, we are going to have the general, we say HTML deals with the opening and closing tags, all right. Most of the tags we have the opening and closing tags. Remember, I said most of the tags are not all because we have some few exceptions. So, to begin with, let's start with the HTML. So, to have the opening HTML tag, the opening HTML tags look like this. We have that is we have the less than sign, all right. Then we have HTML, and then we have the greater than sign. All right, Visual Code helps us to auto-complete the closing tag. So you now see that for the, if you look carefully, you see that for the opening tag, we have the less than sign, HTML, and the greater than sign. Why for the closing tag, we have the greater than sign and a forward slash, and then HTML. We have the less than sign and a forward slash, and then we have the tag name, that is the HTML, and the greater than sign. Within the opening HTML tag and the closing HTML tag, we equally have the head. So once you are dealing with Visual Studio Code, unlike Notepad, which is a text editor, wherein you have to type everything manually. When you are dealing with Visual Studio Code, you just type, for example, you want to type the head open and closing tab, we just type head and we hit enter. It helps us to autocomplete. That's one of the advantages of using Visual Studio Code over other text editor like the Notepad. And you hit enter. Now within the head opening and closing tab, we equally have the title tag. We equally have the title tag. All right. Now when you look at this, and immediately after this head closing tab, we equally have another tag which is known as the body. Now when you look at this is an example of what we call the structure of an HTML document. This is the structure of an HTML document. Now, another way of which we can generate this structure of the HTML document is by using what is known as the ML abbreviation. To generate the structure of an HTML document, we can simply generate it by um, holding shift, all right, holding shift and then click clicking one. Okay, now when you hold shift and you press one, that is one on your keyboard, that's the exclamation sign, you are going to see something like the ML abbreviation. You now hit enter. It's going to generate you this skeleton or the structure of an HTML document. So if you look at it very keenly, you are going to notice that this is our HTML opening tag, and this is the HTML closing tag, right? This is the HTML opening tag, and this is the HTML closing tag. Now, this is the head opening tag, and this is our head closing tag. This is our title opening tag, and this is our title closing tag. Though we have some additional tags, which I'm going to be explaining the days ahead. For example, we have the doc type, that is the document type HTML. That is just a tag that tells us that our document type is HTML. For example, there we have the lang attribute here, which equally tells us that the language here is English language. So in the days ahead, I'm going to be explaining all the other tags here, one after the other. Thank you very much and have a blessed time.